Hello, my name is John Stamper, and I'm going to take a few minutes to tell you about my new book, Courage to Stand Profiles of Enduring Faith. It's a book for Christians, specifically Christian families, and it's all about Christians engaging in spiritual warfare, serious and intimidating spiritual warfare, things that are very real. A lot of Christians are afraid and scared to engage in today's culture, which is anti God, anti Bible, anti Christian, anti everything they believe in. Now, this book encourages believers to stand on God's word, to act on their biblical convictions, and engage in high stakes spiritual warfare. It'll inspire and encourage you to spend more time with God and to put your faith into action. Courage to Stand tells 9 stories of courageous Christians who, throughout time, faced intense conflict and fear, and they did so by obediently and courageously standing on God's word. It's about facing conflicts in our life, spiritual conflicts. Despite our fears, despite our worries, threats that may come our way, accusations, maybe losing friends, or even losing a job. Now, I began writing this book as a follow-up to my first book, Conflicted, Pulling Back the Curtain on Public Education, to encourage Christian teachers who are still teaching in the public school system. But I quickly realized the message of this book applies to all believers, not just teachers. I chose these 9 stories because the people in these stories lived out their faith and stood courageously on God's word. Now, some of the people in this book you may have never heard of, and some you might already be familiar with, but I used perhaps their lesser known stories that highlight their godly courage. And even though some of these people lived 2,500 years ago, the lessons still apply today. They still resonate. Now, the framework of this book is kind of unique. Every profile, every story is seen through the lens of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the 3 Hebrew children who were thrown into the fiery furnace because they would not bow to the golden idol. Now, I chose this approach because their story is just as relevant today as it was when it actually took place 2,500 years ago. And I think each of us can relate to their story because no matter your age, no matter your background, young or old, as Christians, we're going to face trials in this world. We all have our own type of Babylon, which represents an ungodly system, society, or environment. We all have our own types of Nebuchadnezzar, the one who gives ungodly directives or tries to require us or manipulate us into doing ungodly things, into sin. And there are consequences if we don't bow the knee, if we don't obey those ungodly directives. There's a fiery furnace, so to speak. But despite all that, if we hold to our biblical convictions and stand up for what's right, for God's word, and if God is leading us to this place, then we can be assured that He will be with us. And there's nothing better than being in the presence and in the will of God. So if you're a parent, this book would make a great family devotional, something you can talk about at home and around the dinner table. If you're a student, this book's for you too, because the society we're all living in and the culture surrounding us is increasingly hostile toward God, toward the Bible, and toward Christians. And it's important to know that just as God was with the people in this book, that He'll be with you too. And if you're someone who often feels like the stories in the Bible are hard to relate to, or that maybe nothing speaks to the difficulties you're facing in your life, I encourage you to read this book because you'll see yourself in every chapter. So it's an encouragement to all of us, myself included, to be diligent in our daily walk with God, to spend time with Him in prayer, to read the Bible. And when God moves us to action, which may look different for each of us, to willingly go, to act, and to teach our children to do the same, and to encourage other believers to do the same as well. So, in a nutshell, this book highlights those who've actually lived out their faith. They took the words written in the Bible and written on their hearts and applied it to real life situations, to intimidating situations, but incredibly important ones. So again, this book, Courage to Stand, Profiles of Enduring Faith, can be found on masterbooks.com, on Amazon, and on my website, johnstamper.org. Thank you very much.